gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Face in your face. Face in your face.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Sense with Jose Negron. Now, for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar with the channel or watching this channel for the first time, the reason why it is called Uncommon Sense is its logic. For that reason, it is called Uncommon Sense. I also want to let everybody know I have another YouTube channel called Latina Diaspora where I discuss issues regarding to Latinos in the United States. The link to that channel is in the description. I want to let everybody know that I'm currently live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and the subscriber mode has been enabled. And if you wish to enter a comment in the chat, you have to be a subscriber entering the stream for at least 5 minutes. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to all those who've already subscribed to the channel. Whether you've been a supporter from the very beginning or just recently joined, I really appreciate your love and continued support. I also want to give a huge shout out to all those who follow me on social media, as well as those who allow me to enter in YouTube devices, and those who watch from the clouds, even the haters. So, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you have not done so already, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, like, and set the bell notifications to all. So, therefore, whenever so, I hope you're hearing me because my internet is acting up tonight. Um, as you can see by the thumbnail, the topic for tonight is why do they hate? So we're going to get into that discussion why people actually hate, and we may have some discussion regarding what are the consequences of hate. But before we get into the main topic, we're going to have another episode of In My Words. First of all, I have to announce with sadness the passing of Davy Johnson. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with baseball, Davy Johnson was a part of the Baltimore Orioles baseball team that won 4 pennants and 2 World Series titles in the 60s and early 70s. He was the second baseman for the Baltimore Orioles. After that, he played part of his career with the Atlanta Braves and the Philadelphia Phillies. Here in New York, particularly for Met fans, he was the manager of the New York Mets from 1984 to, I believe, 1989, and he actually led the '86 Mets not only to their best season, winning 108 and losing 54, but also winning the World Series against the Boston Red Sox. And of course, those of the Met fans are familiar with Game 6 of the 1986 World Series, where the New York Mets came from 2 runs behind to come back and win Game 6, and then eventually win the World Series in Game 7. Of course, our thoughts and prayers do go out to the family of David Johnson. Okay. To this point, we don't know what was his cause of death. We know that he was 82 years old when he, passed away. But I'm sure that Met fans and Oriole fans will have fond memories regarding David Johnson. Now, another thing that I'm going to discuss, and it's really unfortunate that things happen, is that you have certain individuals who, for reasons unknown, what they will try to do is they'll try to basically porn bob a, 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 a live. Um, what that is, that somehow they will add clips of pornographic material of people engaging in all sorts of. The purpose behind that is to bring embarrassment and shame, and to try to get the people of YouTube to take down this stream. Now, I have been fortunate that no one's tried to do that to me. But what is sad is that when they try to do that with someone who's learning how to navigate with StreamYard, okay, that's what happened um, yesterday, where Grandma Love was doing a live, and unfortunately, the trolls Poem Bob um, her lives, and basically they had to be put in private. Now, I don't know about you, but you have to be a very sick person mentally and with not much of a moral compass to try to do that, particularly regarding someone who is just learning how to navigate with StreamYard. It is a sad reminder that there are people out there that will try to do things like that. That's why content creators like ourselves, we have to be very careful. We have to remain vigilant. Okay? And because there's certain things that I do um, to safeguard myself at home. First of all okay, the enable subscribing rule has been enabled, and before I let anybody get on the panel that I don't know, they insist that they cam up in the backstage. And, and if they refuse to cam up, they're not allowed to enter. Now the good thing is, of course, Grandma let have mods that love her and care about her and look after her. Okay, but it's sad that there are people that do such a thing. And the final thing that I want to talk about is the following. One thing we all have to bear in mind when we are granted the privilege to join a panel, and it's a privilege, we must abide by the rules and guidelines set aside by the host. Okay, because we are entering their cyber home. They determine who gets on the panel. They determine the length of time, and they also determine the conditions allowing people to join the panel. So we all have to bear that in mind. And we cannot get upset with the host if the host insists that we cam up or that we limit our time there because it is their home. They dictate who gets on, under what conditions, and what length of time. The same thing applies here. I'm the one that determines who gets on the panel. I the one that determines how long they should remain. And of course, I'm the one that determines what is the course of action should they refuse to abide by my guidelines. But with that being said, we're going to get to the main topic. Now, hello. Now, before I continue, let me just state that the link to join the panel has been pinned. So, let me make this perfectly clear. If I never seen you before, if I never heard from you before, I will insist that try to flash anything inappropriate or post any pornographic images, which will cause the people of YouTube to take down this stream. Once I make the determination that you are going to abide by my rules and guidelines, you'll be allowed to join the panel. Now, whether you come up or not, that I leave to your discretion. I don't, I don't, I don't make that determination once I determine that you're not a troll. So in that case, the topic for tonight: why do they hate? So what I'm going to do is, let me just start with an overview, and then I'm going to get it into the factors. People hate for complex reasons, often a learned behavior rooted in fear, anger, insecurity, and social conditioning, rather than being purely instinctive. Good evening, Grandma Love. Thank you very much for stopping by. Um, you're more than welcome to to stay here in the chat. At any point, if you wish to hit the link, you're more than welcome to do so. If you prefer to stay in the chat, that's perfectly fine. So the topic of tonight is why do they hate? Factors include the fear of outsiders, the other, the formation of harmful stereotypes, and ideological differences that create a us versus them mentality. Okay, no problem, no problem, and no pressure. And ideological differences that create an us versus them mentality. Hate can also be a twisted form of love from betrayal, a way to gain emotional release, a response of personal threats, or perceived loss of power. Now, let me just discuss the individual and social factors. Fear and insecurity. A fundamental reason for hate is fear, especially fear of what is different from ourselves. This fear can stem from personal experiences of trauma, mistrust, or a general feeling of vulnerability. Stere- Stereotypes and bias. Negative assumptions and beliefs about a group of people, called stereotypes, can form a foundation of hate. When these biases become socially acceptable, they lead to discrimination and even violence. Social conditioning. Hate is a learned response shaped by social factors like parents, peers, the media, and the broader culture. Social pressure. The need to belong to a group can contribute to hate, as people may adapt hateful attitudes to fit in with their in group. Ideological differences. Divergent beliefs about religion, culture, or politics can foster feelings of anger and hatred towards those of opposing viewpoints. Dehumanization. A key aspect of hate is dehumanizing others, seeing them as less than human, which fuels prejudice and oppression. Now I'm going to get into emotional and psychological factors regarding why people hate. Anger and frustration. Unaddressed negative emotions such as anger and stress can build up and escalate into hate. Emotional release. For some, hate can provide a twisted sense of emotional release or control over overwhelming feelings. Self protection. Hate can sometimes be a defense mechanism, a way to protect one's self esteem or the interests of one's community by targeting an external enemy. Twisted love. Deep connections can be warped by betrayal or disappointment, leading to hatred as a powerful, albeit destructive response. So now we're going to go into the role of the other, the in group, out group theory. People naturally form in groups they identify for safety and belonging. When faced with perceived threats of an outgroup, an instinct to protect the in-group can turn into aggression towards the outgroup. Scapegoating. Outgroups can become convenient scapegoats for problems, diverting blame from the real issue and consolidating a group's identity around a shared enemy. Okay, so let me just take care of this. So, and unfortunately, I mean, fake, I mean, hatred can affect people, it can affect groups, it can also affect nations. Okay? And one thing we have to understand that this country's history, this country has a long history. I'm not dealing with those who are different very well. And there are many examples of that. First of all, there's the fact that for 250 years, people were brought from Africa to the United States as slaves. So as a result, they were deprived of their culture, they were deprived of their identity, they are deprived of their religious upbringing, uprooted from their families. And during the time of slavery, you had families that were separated, sold, and of course, they were forced to work for the benefits of their masters. And then after that, you had segregation, which existed in this country for about a century. Not to mention the fact of the poor treatment that we shown towards the indigenous people, the so-called Indians. How many times have we mistreated them? How many times have you know, we signed agreements to violence, forcing them to move against their will? Not to mention the treatment of Japanese Americans during World War II when there was placement in internment camps for fear that they might betray us and fight against us during World War II. And of course, there's also religious hatred. Okay, there was once a time that Catholics was dealt with discrimination and hatred. Uh, and of course, when John Kennedy was running for president, he had to deal with the fact that there was people that did not want him to become president simply because that he was Catholic. And we also have other forms where of hatred in World War, in in the state of Nazi Germany, where millions of souls um, were killed in concentration camps because they were considered less than human because they was not part of the Aryan race, so to speak. So we see again and again and again the negative effects of hate. Now, what I'm going to do is just give me a couple of minutes. Just give me a moment. Now, one thing we have to bear in mind that not only does hate affect you um, mentally, it also has physical effects as well. Okay, and and as a Christian, um, when you hate, what you're doing is you're being led by unforgiveness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss what are the physical effects of hate. Okay, and this is something we all have to take into consideration. So now I'm going to, so the first physical effect of hate is increased stress hormones. Hatred triggers the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which can lead to increased heart rate, blood pressure, and inflammation. The next physical effect is weakened immune system. Chronic stress caused by hatred can suppress the immune system, making individuals more susceptible to infections and illness. It can also cause digestive problems. Hatred can cause stomach upset, nausea, and other digestive issues due to release of stress hormones. Headaches and migraines. The increased hormones associated with hatred can contribute to headaches and migraines. Muscle tension. Hatred can cause muscle tension and clenching, which can lead to pain and discomfort. Now I'm going to share with you what are the mental health effects of hate, which are anxiety and depression. Hatred can foster a sense of anxiety, fear, and depression. Obsessive thoughts. Individuals who harbor hate may become consumed by negative thoughts and ruminations. Paranoia and distrust. Hatred can lead to feelings of paranoia and distrust towards others. Aggression and violence. In some cases, hatred can lead to aggressive behavior and violence. Now, there are other effects to hate. Sleep disturbances. Hatred can disrupt sleep patterns, making it difficult to get a good night's rest. Relationship problems. Hatred can damage relationships with family, friends, and colleagues. Reduce empathy. Hatred can make it difficult to empathize with others and it can lead to a sense of detachment. It's important to note that the physical and mental health effects of hatred can vary depending on the individual and the intensity of their emotions. If you're struggling with hatred, it is essential to seek professional help to manage these feelings and improve your well being. Okay. First of all, um, if hatred is left unchecked, it can lead to an obsession. Okay. And what it does, you lose the ability to have empathy towards other people. You develop a xenophobic view on people who are different. One thing we all have to bear in mind that in this country and in several countries, we have people of all different walks of life. We have people of different who come from different nations. We have people who worship differently. We have people who hold different political views. Hatred can be directed towards a particular ethnic group. Hatred can be directed towards someone of the opposite sex. Hatred can also be directed towards um, communities where they've been marginalized. Okay. It can also be directed towards the LGBTQ community. Okay. And we see this by um, people calling them uh, terms and nasty names, which I would not utter because it's not appropriate. And plus, I'm trying to keep I'm trying to keep this a relatively family oriented stream. Shout out to the people watching, just joining us now. For the benefit of just joining, I'm just explaining the topic. Why do people hate? And I just explained some of the consequences. It can affect your health. It can affect your mental well-being. It can also affect your spiritual well-being. Okay, because as Christians, we are taught to love everybody, whether they're believers or not. We are taught to pray for everybody. And when people do us wrong, we are taught to forgive. Now, now the term forgiveness can, it's for some people it seems controversial because it seems to imply that we are okay with their behavior. No, the way I define forgiveness is that when that hurt, whether it be in a word, thought, or action, no longer affect you, and you can forgive a person, but not have nothing to do with the person any further. Good evening, Irby. Thank you very much for stopping by. So the topic for tonight is why do they hate? Okay. So that people hate for many reasons. Of course, for the most part, hate is a learned behavior. Okay. We can learn it from our parents, we can learn it from our peers, we can learn it from our friends. Okay. And the problem with hate is that when you exhibit hate, you lose the ability to treat others who are different with dignity and respect. And we have seen many, many examples of hate. Mhm. Okay. Well, you know what? I have a feeling that some of the haters they don't even know why they hate. Just something to think about. They don't even know why they hate. They hate nevertheless. Sometimes they just hate simply because of the fact that you're just being the best version of yourself. Okay. And for some reason, it bothers them to no end. Okay. But one thing we have to understand, they're the ones with the issue, not us. If anyone hates us because of, of who we are or because us simply trying to be the best version of ourselves, they're the ones with the issue, not us. Okay. And let me just check. Now, what I'm going to do is now, of course, there is a spiritual element when it comes to sin. Okay, and for those who do not know me, I am a Christian. Okay, I'm a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ. He is my Lord and Savior. So, of course, when it comes to sin, I'm going to speak. I'm going to speak on a on the religious aspects of sin. So, of course, the question is this: is feeling hatred a sin? And the answer is yes. In Christian and Islamic ideology, feeling a hatred to another person is considered sin because it goes against the core teachings on love and forgiveness. While emotion itself may be a natural human response to pain or offense, letting develop into deliberate desire for another person's misfortune or harm, or allowing to harden your heart is sinful. The distinction is often made between hating the sinful act and hating the sinner, emphasize the importance of showing mercy and love even to those who have caused us harm. So let me just continue. God's word consistently condemns hatred as destructive, evil, and contrary to divine principles, emphasizing that it causes strife, spiritual harm, and injustice, and that believers should instead respond to hate with love, peace, and justice, ultimately striving to hate evil and practice love and forgiveness. Now, of course, hatred is sinful. The Bible depicts hatred as a destructive force that stirs up strife and leads to evil actions, such as those by Joseph's brothers, who, out of hatred, plotted to kill him and sold him into slavery. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the story of Joseph, back in the book of Genesis, his brothers was envious and jealous of Joseph. So what they did was they took him, sold him into slavery, and made it like he was killed by animals. So as a result, um, Jacob was mourning the death of a son that did not die, and deception was used by his brothers. Now, hatred also contradicts God's nature. God is love and righteousness, and he despises evil, including hate that leads to violence, deception, and injustice, particularly in the example that I just alluded to regarding Joseph and his brothers. It harms believers. The Holy Spirit is grieved by malice, anger, and bitterness, and evil speaking, which are all aspects of hatred. And of course, God called people to hate what is evil, pride, and arrogance, and prefer speech. In other words, hate the act, not the person. Now, the principle responsive to hate with love is an eternal rule taught. Okay, no, I'm not gonna. Okay, so we're taught as Christians that whenever there were hate, we respond to love. That is, we do not wish ill will towards those who hate us. Now I'm going to show verses in scripture when it talks about what God had to say when it comes to hate. Now in Psalm 97 verse 10 says, "You who love the Lord hate evil." I think that's self-explanatory. In Proverbs 8 verse 13 says, "The fear of the Lord is the hatred of evil, pride and arrogance, and the way of evil is perverted speech I hate." In Romans chapter 12 verse 9 talks about let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. So, and of course there are spiritual consequences to hate, okay? Which are you can deprive yourself of God's blessings, you can deprive yourself of God's healing power. And if hatred left unchecked, you can end up spending eternity separated from God's presence. That's how toxic and dangerous is hate. Okay. And of course we're living in a world where the world taught teaches us that it's okay to hate. It's okay to get even. Okay. Well, first of all, when you try to do evil against someone, it doesn't end up that way. And what you do is you end up hating yourself. Hey Gigi, how you doing? Thank you very much for stopping by. Um, so the topic for tonight is why do they hate? Now let me just make a distinction, okay? I'm not referring to the ops, okay? I'm referring to people that actually show general hate, no, hatred towards people, hatred towards like agenda, hatred towards certain people, hatred towards religious groups, hatred towards ethnic groups, okay, including hatred towards the LGBTQ community, okay, which is basically when we hate, we lose the ability to have empathy towards another person. We also lose the ability to forgive. Now, I understand with some people, forgiveness could be uh, a trigger word, okay, because it's based on what some people have an understanding regarding forgiveness. Again, the way I define forgiveness is that state when you are no longer affected by the thought, word, or action. Also, you can forgive a person and not have anything to do with the person again, okay? Because that person's behavior, that person's actions are such that you choose not to have anything to do with that person. And at times you do have to separate yourself from those individuals. in order to maintain your mental well-being, also maintain your emotional well-being and your physical well-being, because there are physical effects to hate. Okay, you can lose sleep over the hate that you have. It can weaken your immune system. Okay, it can leave you susceptible to um, all sorts of physical diseases and things of that nature, all because of hate. Because what happens is when you hate, um, the body is not as is not capable of dealing with any illnesses. And we have seen the facts of history, what happened when people hate. Okay. And some have been to horrible consequences where individuals were lynched, individuals were deleted, all because of their skin color, all because they they worship a philosophy or certain group. Okay. The way I deal with hate is that these are people that are hurt. These are people that have allowed themselves to be consumed by hate. Okay. And sometimes, unfortunately, you have to separate yourselves for your own well-being. Okay. I don't do it out of hate. I do it because they are exhibiting destructive behavior or toxic behavior that I choose not to indulge in. I choose not to participate. Okay. And yes, there have been people that I had to end fellowship with because of their hateful behavior. I mean, I didn't enjoy doing it, but I have to think of my own well-being. I have to think about my my physical health. I have to think about my mental health. I also have to think about my spiritual health as well. Okay. In fact, there are now I'm trying to think. There's a YouTube channel which I, for the life of me, could not remember. But it's a Christian channel. Well, what it does, it deals with um a lot of the fictional characters that what happened was that they were deleted, and then next thing you know it, they're in heaven and they're being judged by God Almighty regarding all their deeds, all their thoughts and their words and their actions. And of course actions are in display. And of course, what it does is, if if these people are not written in, in the book of life, then what happened is they'll spend eternity from God's sight. Okay. And one of the things that, and one of the videos had to do with hate, where um, a person, had hatred towards certain people, whether it be because of hatred towards the African American community or hatred towards the Asian community. Okay, Urban, you need, okay, can you clarify that a little bit, please? But you know what's ironic? Okay, that this person who gone through this fictional character that gone through his life hating others were the ones that were trying to save his life. Okay, and unfortunately, this fictional character ended up away from God's presence because of hate. Okay, and actually, when you think about it, hatred is poisonous. Okay, because it does make it is, it what it does, it becomes an obsession when you start to, I feel like you have to like be like a gatekeeping because certain groups of people. Okay, also you also you tend to, hold judgments against certain people. Yeah, yeah, I saw the, I saw the video, Gigi, and uh all I can say is that some people have too much time in their hands, to be going back and forth with you. I mean, but then again, it's really nothing new. Yeah, I mean, look, there's such, and another problem is when you hate, um, it means that you don't have much of a moral compass, because anyone that has a moral compass, okay, you're going to be affected by what people say or do. That's natural. You're going to be hurt for what people say or do. Okay. Okay. But let's try to keep the focus on the topic. Um, when you allow yourself to be governed by hate, um, it can destroy relationships. It can destroy families. It can destroy marriages. Okay. because it's an obsession, and and you spend so much time thinking about thinking about this thing called hatred that you might plan to do acts of violence against certain people, or you wish them ill will. Okay, and again, we see through history what the consequences of hatred. Okay, we saw the consequences of hatred in this country when people are hated because of their skin color. People are hated because of their gender. People are hated because of their ethnic group. People are hated because they worship differently or they don't worship at all. And even people who are, part of groups that we call nasty names. And then another type of hate is self-hatred. Okay, so let me just so what I'm gonna do is okay, let me just see. I mean, look, part of the reason why people hate is that they're taught to view certain groups as bad. Let's keep it real. That's why. So let me just. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share what are the signs of self-hatred. Okay, and then I'll talk a little bit, and then if no one hits the link, hits the link to join the panel, I'll stop to wrap it up. So here are the symptoms of self-hatred: anxiety, depression, and hopelessness, fixation of negative feelings, rumination, feeling inadequate, lack of motivation, socially withdrawn, extreme emotional changes, emotional reliability, difficulty empathizing with others, emotional rigidity. Now, there are the ways that you can be treated regarding self hatred. Treatment for self hatred often involves seeking help from a mental health professional, especially through cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, to challenge negative thought patterns. Therapy can help you understand your thoughts and feelings affect behavior, leading to more positive coping strategies. Additionally, practicing self compassion and engaging in self care activities are important steps in managing and overcoming feelings of self hatred. And there are different types of professional help. Talk therapy is a mental health professional can guide you through working through difficult thoughts and feelings. Cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, this type of therapy focuses on identifying and changing unhealthy thought patterns to foster more positive behaviors, and a better response to challenges. Professional support. Therapy is a sign of strength and self care, not weakness or failure. So now we're going to deal with some coping strategies. Self compassion. Actively working on treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a friend. Challenge negative thoughts. Recognize when you're engaging in self critical thinking and consciously work to reframe those thoughts into more positive and idealistic ones. Focus on strength. Make an effort to acknowledge your positive qualities and achievements rather than solely focusing on perceived flaws. Mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness can help you to become more aware of your thoughts and feelings without judgment, fostering a greater self acceptance. Okay. So, of course, in discussion of hate, I also have to have to deal with self hatred. And people can have self hatred for many reasons. But there is therapy out there to help you to deal with self hatred, and it's also therapy to help you to deal with hatred as well. Now, I've been talking for about an hour, so if anyone wishes to hit the link and opine regarding the topic at hand, they can do so. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, I understand that. If there are no further comments, and if people choose not to join the panel, then I'll start to wrap it up. But good evening, April Showers. Thank you very much for stopping by. So, the topic for tonight is why do they hate? So earlier in the live, I dealt with the reasons why they hate. I also dealt with what causes hate, the symptoms, and the side effects. And of course, the effect of hate is it can become an obsession and left unchecked. It can lead to possibly, you know, actually wishing someone's harm, or it can also lead to criminal activity. And of course, it has consequences regarding your mental well, your physical well-being. It can weaken your immune system, makes it harder to fight out different types of disease, and it can also affect you mental. And as a Christian, um, when you hate, you're robbing yourself of God's blessings, and if that hatred is left unchecked, you can end up possibly spending eternity away from God's presence. Now, the key is you can hate the act, but you don't hate the person. Let me repeat that again. You can hate the act, don't hate the person. If someone have, you know, caused physical harm, or someone has tried to um, ruin your reputation with deception and lies, you can hate the actions. Don't hate the person, because when you hate the person, you're no better than the person that's causing that's filled with hate. And we all know that all of us are better than that. We all are affected by hate. We all, we've been hurt by hate. but you don't respond with hate with more hate. How you deal with it is you just have to separate yourself from these individuals, and if they're unwilling to change their behavior, then you have to separate yourself from these people permanently for your own well-being, not just your physical well-being, your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, and your spiritual well-being. Because hatred is like a poison. You don't consume poisons. Okay, so I just want to have a discussion regarding hate. Okay, regarding white people hate, and for some people, it is like a some sort of a mechanism, so to speak. And one thing we have to understand, it is learned behavior, but it's also behavior that could be unlearned. Okay. In fact, I remember years ago that there was a person that used to be a racist, and this person belonged to a white supremacy group. Eventually, this person was able to get the help he needed, and he was no longer hating people of color. And this person actually took accountability for his actions. Okay. Now, the reason why I mentioned that is because while hatred is behavior which can be learned, it can be unlearned as well. Okay. However, the person has got to be able to take accountability for their actions and get to the point when they see that having hatred can harm them physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Okay. And being that no one is going to join me at this point, I'm to, going to start to wrap this up. But I do appreciate all the interaction from the people in the chat. Um, and of course, um, they each have their own respected YouTube channel. Grandma Love has her own YouTube channel, so I'm gonna ask that you show some love for her. Check out her content. Also, April Showers have her own channel. Please check out her content. And the same thing applies to both Irby and DG. So let me just give you my final thoughts when it comes to hate. Treat hatred as a poison. Okay, because that's what it is. Because when you hate, you lose the ability to value people by the strength of their character. Also, you you lose the ability to have empathy. Okay. Again, you can hate the actions. You should hate the actions. Never hate the person. Okay. Let me just repeat it again. Hate the actions, not the person. Okay. Because what you're doing more harm to yourself than the person who you're directing the hatred with. And with that being said, I'm gonna start to wrap this up. I want to I really, and again, I really appreciate all those um, who hop on the live on the clouds and who will watch it on the playback. Now, Wednesday, I'm gonna give you my reflections regarding 9/11, and I'm doing this the eve of 9/11. Okay, of course, we we remember the sad effect, the sad situation where on September 11th, 2001, um, nearly 3,000 people were deleted um, because of the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, also the attack on the Pentagon and plane crashing in Pennsylvania. And I just want to say that our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of these people who lost loved ones, friends, neighbors. Okay. Because for them, their grief continues. And for them, it's like it happened yesterday. And for them, for all intents and purposes, it has. So let's no let's keep the families of these people in our thoughts and prayers. And with that being said, of course, the playback end, do your thing. You're more than welcome to enter other comments. Okay, you're more than welcome to share it as long as it's for the purpose of trying to educate. And of course, you're more than welcome to to comment. Just keep your comments respectable. Okay. And of course, we're gonna close the same way that we always close. We must do everything possible to avoid the presence of the mentally and intellectually challenged. Because if we fail to do so, we will be infected by the stupidity and massive insanity. This has been another episode of Uncommon Sense with Jose Negron saying good night, take care, be blessed, and peace.